Good morning, everyone. We should be starting in like 2 minutes. So, welcome to the Education Hub Pavilion. So, this session is mostly about storytelling, inspiring through storytelling, because we are addressing a very big challenge of literacy. So, we want to see how can we use diverse skills, diverse experts, knowledge on different aspects of storytelling, on different aspects of innovation, to see that at least all of us can use the digital tools that we have, maybe our phones or maybe our cameras, or something we can use to tell stories. You could be an author, you could be, an educator. So we have to tap onto that diverse voice. So this is what the session is about. My name is Derek Mugisha, and I'll be the moderator of this session. I work for earthday.org as the Regional Director Africa. And today I'm joined by very wonderful panelists. On my immediate right is Ezekiel Nyafo from Liberia. And then we also have Greg Shedok from Climate Clock. So that's how we are going to be here. And then online we have Surina Narula, the president of Television for Environment, and then Ashika Kapul, who's a very inspiring young leader and a filmmaker and a winner of the Green Oscars. So before we get started, I want us to show you briefly what we have been doing in the last couple of years. So we developed a Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit. It's a very inspiring toolkit for most of us who want to educate, because most times we ask ourselves, I do really want to educate, but then I do not have the tools, maybe a material to use to educate. Most of us want to pile our knowledge into a book, and then you go on and educate someone, or you want to create awareness. So together with so many African leaders, we worked for 6 months to try and make sure the toolkit was working. It was out there for all of us educators to use, so that when you start doing your climate work, at least you have a resource that you can use in your community, which is a very simplified material. I'm sure Ezekiel will speak about this because he's one of the authors. So we shall definitely go to Ezekiel. So Ezekiel, I'll just ask you for 2 minutes to talk more about the process of what we went through to develop the toolkit, and also how it's going to be helpful. Already, if you have any success stories of using the toolkit in your community, how has it been? So Ezekiel, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ezekiel Yamfa, and I'm from Liberia, West Africa. Like Derek Mugisha said, we have been working on this project called the Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit. We discovered that climate change should be contextualized. You cannot use educational resources in Europe, in America, and be using them in Africa, because Africa, the impact of climate change in Africa is different from other countries. So we decided to develop this Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit that will be used as a resource material to promote climate literacy in Africa. So we went to fday.org and other youth organizations across the various regions in Africa, West, Southeast, and North Africa. We brought them together, coordinated by fday.org Africa chapter, and we developed this toolkit. We took about 6 months in developing this toolkit. It was a very rigorous process, but the end result, with the help of fday.org, we were able to come up with this educational resource material that is currently being used in 10 countries across Africa. On a daily basis, we receive emails for approval to use this resource material in African countries. And the last email we received was from Nigeria. And luckily for us, we met this guy currently at COP27, telling us how the toolkit has been very much impactful in educational climate education club across Africa. And for for the developmental process, the toolkit is been they have various subtopics about the past and present situation of climate change, the impact of climate change mitigation, and especially interesting about the toolkit is the best practices. We share stories of African youth. I think Jen from FDID is one of those young person that we reflect his story on conservation. And there are so many different best practices that is in the toolkit. And we also have some action points. We also have some videos, some FDID that children can use, youth can use. And it is very simple, very, very much simple. And I hope that everyone in here can be able to use the toolkit. I think Derek have it on the screen, and it will be shown as we go ahead. So thank you very much, Derek.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll just show you a slide where you can maybe just see the. So. Yes, so this is the name to the toolkit. It's called the Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit, because we didn't develop the toolkit just for us to have. It's for us to motivate other young people who are like starting their careers. Also for easy for use for educators. So in case you're an educator, this is a toolkit that you can use to educate in your community. So the main objective is to see how can we rally a global movement that is aware, but it's going to use the same information we are sharing in the toolkit, or the information you have, to see that they're civically engaged. Because it's one way to have education, but also it's another way to use the education for like green jobs, you know, trying to innovate. Today we have innovators who have like come up with a product at least, but this did just start from wherever. It started from having knowledge, having capacity, having skills, and this is what this toolkit delivers. So if you want to download this toolkit, it's on our website, earthday.org/Africa. So you'll be able to download the toolkit. It's a very, very easy to use toolkit. You'll actually like it. So you can just download this toolkit.
And also you can just step on the internet, Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit. You have it coming up.
Yeah. So let's go to the next stage. So the objective of this session today is to catalyze action through the power of storytelling and climate educator solutions. So from the panelists you're going to hear from, these are tested people. They have really done this in communities. They have impact. They have tested impact, which you're going to hear from them. But also we want to leverage from the different, power that they have and the solutions to advocate for climate education for all. Because you could hear from all the sessions from the first day of COP, where they said we need action. We need everyone to act. But the first step, if you want all of us to act, is through education. That's the first stage. First, make sure all of us are on the same page. But to me, I don't think all of us are still on the same page. We have an imbalance in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills, in terms of capacity. And for us to bridge that gap is why we want to bring in storytellers to see how can we accelerate this kind of progress. So I'll start from Greg. If you can introduce yourself and the work you do, maybe tell us more about your work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Derek, and thank you for having me. I'm with Climate Clock, climateclock.world, and I'm our head of product and technology. So we make the climate clock. We have monumental climate clocks. We have our action clocks, our portable action clocks that can be taken on the road into meetings. And then we also have lobby clocks that are about 6 feet wide that in Glasgow we featured on a climate clock car on top of a car. But our message is all about our deadlines, but then we also have the world's a deadline, but many lifelines. So we try to have a message of inspiration there, but our deadline is about our window of hope to act in time, and we try to get this message out there so that there's no talk about 2070 as there was in Glasgow, 2060, 2050, even 2040, right? It's less than 7 years, and that's even on the IPCC's data that is fairly conservative even in the predictions that it makes. So we want to get this out there, this message out there simply that have to act now. And then also we work with partners to make lifelines, and might show you more of those, but those are supposed to be a message of inspiration and a way to get different messages out there, out to empower different activists and different groups to get their message out in the world.
All right, thank you. So we shall cross to the online panelists. So before I invite Sulina, I'll just show you some videos. So I'll show you some.
Show you how your actions can affect the planet.
Let's go from harming our planet to healing it. Even smaller amounts of litter like this can severely damage our planet.
When we use plastic, we don't think of how damaging each piece is.
Many animals are harmed by our usage of plastic. To save these animals, we must work together to reduce the amount we use.
Landfills are bad for our health and environment.
Water that is polluted carries around bacteria, chemicals and parasites.
This makes it unusable for drinking, cleaning, swimming and other activities. We can prevent litter by recycling plastic correctly, or even educate other people about how to keep our earth clean.
Do you know how much plastic goes into the ocean every year?
One garbage truck of plastic is discarded into our oceans every minute. Litter is in a lot of places, and soon it will be everywhere.
And small acts like this can help so much.
In fact, 60% of water pollution is from litter and not greenhouse gases.
Water pollution started affecting lives back in the mid-19th century.
We can all make a difference. If we want future generations to live a happy and healthy life, we must stop all types of pollution. In our universe, millions of galaxies. In our galaxy, only one Earth.
Let's preserve, not destroy. Thank you. Science is clear for us to see. Time is running out.
Hello, my name is Jimmy, and these are my friends Imogen and Jack, and today we're going to tell you about our planet Earth and the bad conditions about it.
Litter is a big global warming in this world, and please help us save it. In 2050, this is what our planet will look like.
Our planet is very fragile, so care must be taken by us, as we are the only caretakers of this world.
There is an estimate of 6,729 pieces of litter per roadway.
It's getting late, shall we go now?
Yes!
Look at all the litter they've left. US roadways accumulate over 51 billion pieces of litter per year.
In 10 to 12 metric tons of plastic waste enters the ocean each year.
When we recycle plastic bottles, they can be made into other things. For example, packaging, bags, furniture, paint pots, and even trousers.
Litter is toxic to the animals because when they consume it, it can harm their inside and get trapped around their body.
If we work together, we can change this planet for good.
Help our planet by picking up your litter or other people's litter.
Every day I walk to school and all I see is litter and smell smoke from the cars.
Time is running out. Help us by picking up your litter and remember we have no planet B.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, so you've seen from what storytelling can do, and I'll invite Miss Sulina Nalula, who's online. to tell us more about this amazing work. This is very inspiring to see very young people, being the one doing the storytelling. So over to you, Sorina.
Hi, Derek. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I can't hear anybody on the stage. I couldn't hear you at all.
I was saying, if you could
raise your hand if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can. I was saying, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us more about the amazing videos you've seen and more about your work.
You're on stage. Yeah. You're all muted. I can't hear you. Shall I talk? You raise your hand and I can start talking.
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll start with these films. These films have been made by 8-year-olds. This is our latest project. And this is a project very close to my heart. I've been with this organization for 12 years. Started around 40 years ago, making films on the environment. And it was founded by the UN and by WWF and ITV and Sir David Attenborough. It was the only production agency which produced films on environmental degradation and its impact on societies around the world. So it started off like that. And a couple of, around 12 years ago, we felt that there were lots of films being made on the environment and we need to go the next step. How do you educate people? How do you educate communities? How do you educate civil society? So our program started with looking at what should we do next. And we started several programs. One of them was the Global Sustainability Film Awards. We decided to find the best films on the environment and award them and share them with the communities and people across the world. So that started around 11 years ago. And today we have a very good program where companies, corporates, young people, they all share the environmental films. They present them to us. And there is a jury worldwide that recognizes the best films, and we share them with the communities. And we have in our archives around 12,000 films made over the years. We are looking at partners to help us digitize these films so that we can share them with the rest of the world, the ones that were digitized many, many years ago. So our program going back to the children. We've started taking some of these films to schools, showing them, and also showing them how to make the films. We've been going to younger and younger children. We started off with our program called Bio Movies, which was with young people. They were older students from colleges, schools, and we taught them. We sent them a small amount of money to make these films and submit them, even if they were made on an iPhone or they were made on the camera, they would submit them. And that is how our Bio Movies program was very successful. We used to give awards for the best films. And one of the people who won, who was actually shortlisted, Garment, is here today. He's one of our success stories. He joined us by submitting his film to our Bio Movies project, and now today he has made a mark for himself in Tanzania and is currently one of our jury members for our annual Global Sustainability Film Awards. So you can see how over the years we have, followed, we've learned from our mistakes, we've moved forward, we started with an older generation, we started making films to reach out to the community, we went to younger and younger students. Our Global Sustainability Film Awards are very popular now. We get around 70 to 100 entries for the Global Sustainability Film Awards. These are held at BAFTA every year. And initially when we started, we asked the companies to submit this CSR program and let us know what they do. outside of their companies, whatever sustainability events they help. Now, later on, we decided to go a big step further. CSR seems to be now left behind because we need to think of more innovative programs. And we asked these companies to let us know how they are bringing sustainability into their own organizations. What are they packaging with? And submit these films to us, how it's becoming the SDGs are being followed within the companies. So now our films also come from companies, and we award companies that provide us with this information. We've been championing these coordinations for the past 11 years. The awards are a focal point for showcasing these ideas and solutions to an even wider audience. We've also realized that climate change discussion, as I said, has to start at a very, very early age. And we've gone to schools and taught 8 to 9-year-old children, as you've seen in the beginning of the program.
All right.
Actually, I can't hear you also. It's very hard to talk in the context that I have been speaking. I'm trying my best. Can you be unmuted somehow on the stage and I can hear you? Because that will help me kind of with my... I still can't hear you. I'll try my best.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We also have a project. So one of our longest ongoing project is the Children of Rio project. We started filming 10 children from around the world, beginning in the year of Rio Earth Summit in 1992. And every 10 years we go back and look at the lives of these children. Now they are 30 years old, and through this work we look at not only the effects of climate change in their lives, but also all the UN SDG goals in and around their lives. The children are from countries like India, China, Brazil, South Africa, Britain, Canada, Kenya. The one key lesson that we learned from the project is that climate change and its mitigation strategies cannot be realized by ignoring the crucial SDG targets set out by the UN. The lives of the children and their futures were dramatically affected by how the countries tackle these issues in their policies.
All right. Thank you for that.
And finally, I'll finish with this. Our films from our archives are used as important academic research materials in a lot of universities in North America and Europe. We want to make these materials available to even wider audiences. Hence, we are digitizing a lot of our material and making it online for people to watch and take ideas from. I hope I could explain this. Thank you very much for having me here.
All right. Thank you very much for that amazing work I think you're doing and talking about how you're starting to mentor them at a very early age. Because I think when you start grooming from a very early age, a lot of things can be achieved in a long term. So I'll bring in Ashwika Kapul, and I'll tell you she's a qualified science communicator and a multi-national, international award-winning nature filmmaking. Actually, something I really liked about her is at 27 years, Ashwika had a singular privilege of becoming India's youngest and only woman to win the Green Oscar of Panda Award. So that's a very huge, because, you know, most times we see filmmakers being like, you know, people have been there for like 30 years in the field, but at 27 years, you know, someone gets such kind of a recognition. So Ashwika, if you can go ahead and tell us more about your work and maybe about the award as well.
Like you said, I'm a qualified science communicator and a natural history filmmaker. I work as a director and a producer and a presenter, a television presenter on various nature and wildlife documentaries. The kind of things that you see on television on channels like BBC and Netflix and National Geographic and Discovery. And I also work for various regional platforms like Round Glass Sustain in India. I make independent documentaries as well on conservation specifically, and I take time out very consciously from my primary career as a filmmaker to act as a mentor and as a nature educator for young people around the world. One of my most recent engagements was with the Natural History Museum of London, and I was mentoring young minds internationally about the power of storytelling when it comes to conservation awareness and environmental awareness. So that's what I do. I do a combination of things, but that combination of things is really aimed at one thing, which is a better planet, a healthier planet, and spreading awareness, especially among young people, inspiring young people to champion the natural world. So yeah, that's me in brief.
All right. So let's dive into actually how can we now do this? You know, you have heard from the diverse voice that I told you about. You have heard from filmmakers. You have heard from media experts. You have heard from innovators that have very nice products that can tell you that we are really in a crisis, and the more the time goes, we are really in a very, very bad things are coming for us. You have seen floods happening all over Africa. You have seen Pakistan. You have seen India, from all across the world. But then, how can we start to put this message out there? So I'll start with Ezekiel. What innovative ways can you leverage from, you work with young people, from youth empowerment skills, how can we get them to have those green jobs using the toolkit? How can it help try to bridge these gaps that we have so far?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Derek. What can we leverage on when it comes to using education to create green jobs? Like you said from the opening statement, that the first step to innovation, to creativity, is education. As long as you have access to information, you are in the know of the circumstances surrounding what is happening, then you can start to innovate. And I think the young people need to understand that there are business opportunities within climate change. We call them climate action enterprises. For example, in my country, one of the climate resilient crop we have is cassava. And cassava is resilient. It can grow anytime, any situation, any circumstances. Now, can we use cassava to add value to it in order to solve the food crisis? That's another question. So, innovation is not only about technology, it's all about ideas. You are looking at something very tangible right in front of us. It keeps us on the alert to know that we have less than 5 years, less than 4 years, less than 2 years. So the young people got to leverage on the existing opportunities that we have in the climate space. When it comes to the educational sector, we can use storytelling as a very powerful tool. Share your experiences, share your challenges, and share what is working for you. You are from Uganda. What worked for you in Uganda? I can use the idea and contextualize it in Liberia and solve similar problem. So all in all, the most important thing is sharing experiences, sharing best practices, sharing knowledge, and sometimes allow the young people to be part of the process. Whenever we are discussing curriculum development, for Liberia, at this point in time, we are about to leverage on transitioning our curriculum from what we have to a climate resilient curriculum that will prepare the young people in Liberia to climate opportunities. And from our angle as young people for the Librarian for Climate Action, we are the leading NGO in Liberia that promote climate literacy. So we are about to tell our government that you want to revise our curriculum. Let us become co-developer of this curriculum. We know what we are facing. We know what we want within the curriculum. So it's just very simple. Get them involved, the young people.
All right, get them involved. So let's engage Greg. You know, you've been involved with this. Maybe if you could tell us more about, you know, how can we use the power of like such a product, you know? How can we make sure we amplify such innovations? Because they're trying to open our eyes. They're trying to warn us. They're trying to create a story. You're trying to like inform, you know, educate using like a climate clock, for example. So how can we like amplify such innovations? What more can we do? What needs to be done?
Yeah, thank you, Derek, and thank you for having Climate Clock and all of us here. I think when I first spoke, I think I bored everyone onto their cell phones because I didn't tell a story, right? And the question was phrased as, you know, how can we amplify this innovation? But the real question is, we're trying to amplify activists, and we're trying to amplify the message of politicians that are working, that understand this message. So it's not about amplifying the innovation. Tech should never be about itself. It's about empowering your message or the work that's already there, right? So I've always tried to make sure that we are about supporting, amplifying, throw in more business speak, right? All the work that is out there already. And so I want to talk about like a panel that Shea Bastida's on that I went to earlier, that she had the clock, a young, amazing, well-spoken youth activist. And she said at the end of her talk that was on the Arctic and was very science-based, she said her takeaway was, despite all this really, most of it depressing science about the Arctic melting and the albedo effect and positive feedback loops, right? She said, I want everyone to walk away and work on their climate story. And what she's been able to do working with the clock is, I think it's a way to get the numbers into the story as well. So we know we need to get into the storytelling, but the storytelling also needs to have the numbers and understand, make it very clear how fast we have to act to save the things we love in our stories that are important to us. So that's a way that the Climate Clock can work. It can help amplify people's stories and make sure that the urgency and the science is not lost, but at the same time does not put people to sleep when we're just talking about science, which I often have the capacity to do because I came from a science background, and that's a lot of where my head was thinking, and I didn't have this one single aha moment. So I'm still working on my climate story, but that's a story for the Climate Clock.
All right, thank you very much for that. I think we shall move to Ashwika. Ashwika, you have used films before. You've got so many awards from this kind of work. So how can we leverage from that power of that innovative, creativity, telling so many community stories, telling your own story, for example? What can you tell young people out there or maybe innovators? You've heard from Greg. He's still working on his story. So how can he pack all this kind of information in using the power of storytelling and then maybe filmmaking as well?
Storytelling is one of the most powerful tools. I think we can all agree that it's one of the most powerful tools at our disposal. And good stories have the power to affect real change and even bring about enough change to move people to action. And personally, my natural history content, even just the things that I've worked on, has been my most effective tool at my disposal to engage audiences, especially young audiences, with nature. And the thing is, because becoming a conservationist and championing the natural world comes from a very deep space of inspiration. It's not something that can be preached or demanded or taught to somebody or lectured. It is something that comes from within. It is something that comes from a very deep space of inspiration. And I think that's what storytelling and films have the power to do. It has the power to sort of inspire people, and that's why it's just such a powerful medium. I think on some level, the lack of awareness globally amongst audiences and young people especially, that's no longer as much of a problem. I think most people actually now, urban audiences especially, they know that there is a problem. Climate change is not an alien phrase anymore at all. People know that this is happening. I think the real problem is indifference to the issue. It's not awareness as much as indifference to the issue. And the only way you can change indifference to involvement and action is with inspiration. And that's precisely what I think nature films and good storytelling can provide. It sort of takes you into the wonders of the natural world. It gives you these wonderful, heartfelt shots of inspiration from the natural world, telling you both the good and the bad, if it's told in the right kind of way, and moves you from within to actually sit up and do something about that thing rather than just be aware of it. And I think that can rarely be sort of achieved through textbooks and preaching and lecturing and moral policing even. So that's, I think, where filmmaking really comes in. And I say this especially because I come from a region where, of course, environmental education, I'm going to be very honest and frank here, environmental education and climate education is very much part of the syllabus, but it is frankly the least priority, and it's very theoretical in textbooks and stuff like that. So it's just another mandatory subject in a school, and that just doesn't convert children. It bores the living daylights out of them, and it's not something that engages kids at all. So if we really want to educate children about the environment and educate children about climate change, we've got to start thinking out of the box. It's not going to work with a textbook. It's not going to work with moral policing. It's not going to work with demanding that sort of action from them. It's going to come from inspiring adults and children. So we've got to really start thinking out of the box, and I think storytelling is the biggest ace up our sleeves for that.
All right, those are very powerful words. Inspiring. Because if we can inspire more voices so that they are also empowered with knowledge, with skills, with capacity, we could see so many innovations. We could see maybe actions coming from world leaders, them understanding what's happening, because they could be saying, oh, we don't see, maybe don't know where to see, no, there's no information about it. So that's why we need diverse voices. And speaking of diverse voices, I'll bring in Surina here. You have this kind of media background. You're president of a TVE, which is a media television for the environment. You really interact with so many young people. You interact with so many government officials, private sector. So how can we package all this and tap onto the power of media, for example? How can we utilize media in a way that we are actually telling more stories through the line, but also trying to reach people in their homesteads, but also trying to rally world leaders to really take the action? So how can we leverage from that power of media?
I loved what Ashwika said, that you have to have inspirational material for children to follow. For example, the film we awarded a year ago, got an Oscar in the end. It was called Octopus, My Teacher. And Octopus, My Teacher, if you watch that film, you slowly get into it, and Octopus becomes the hero. And you just watch it and you're really inspired. So it has to be great storytelling, as she said. And that great storytelling also goes a long way in the media. So when media is reporting from somewhere and explaining what exactly is going on in a very interesting, out of the box way, people get inspired and do something about it. So it is a great responsibility of the media to bring these stories to people, to change what's happening. For example, in Hertfordshire this year, because of climate change, there were 2 houses that got burnt. First, because of climate change, they got fire, which is unheard of in England for such a thing to happen. And
should have.
I think we might have lost her.
But we could, she'll come back and then we shall start from where she has ended. So I'll bring in again Greg into here. So in terms of trying to scale this innovation that is trying to educate us, preparing us on all these kind of things, what are those challenges you're actually facing? Because I know it's not easy. So there could be those challenges you find. So what are those challenges you're facing in trying to scale the innovation forward?
Yeah, that's a constant challenge. But I just wanted to tap back on the conversation with the media and just share that I think there's this constant idea that it is hard, or it's a constant complaint you hear with us activists or et cetera, or educators, if we're trying to get media on education, that it's either depressing or it's boring or it's going to turn people off, right? And or where's the story, even though we're out in the streets, et cetera, where's the story? But part of the power of the clock, or the way it can be used as a tool, is to generate that story or make it interesting, get the photo opportunity, and insert itself into media. A lot of us are based in New York City, and New York One, it's part of Time Warner Spectrum. On their 10 p.m. show, they have the clock on their 10 p.m. environmental show. And what we need, because not everyone is TV environment, right? We need to, but it should be. Everyone should be TV climate justice, environmental justice. That should be everywhere. And so this is a tool that we try to empower people with, and to do that though, we need to scale it, which was the question. And there's been a lot of scaling where we work as a startup, basically. Even though we're a small NGO, we don't have money. Any funders out there? Any funders watching? Please contact Alexa at climateclock.world. But our fundraiser. But it's tough. But one thing with funding is it's only 2 or 3% of philanthropy globally that goes into climate. So it's really tough. And then in addition to just working, I refer to myself as a recovering engineer, but I was more software, but now getting into hardware and woodwork and et cetera, and then trying to make that scale is something that's hard to begin with from a startup place. And I've had the opportunity to learn a lot, and then it got much harder with COVID. We were originally using Raspberry Pis, and I thought the supply of Raspberry Pis was just going down because of the holidays, because it often does, but then it turned out it was because of the silicone shortage, and then we couldn't get Raspberry Pis for the clocks. So, and for those who don't know Raspberry Pis, it's not a dessert, but it is the little small computer that's often used in education projects. So now we've moved off, and we're using a lot of different Adafruit hardware, and so we have not a custom board, but a Adafruit. It's called the Adafruit M4 Portal. That's powering the clock, and Adafruit's amazing that it has all these educational pieces and at an affordable price. So that has really helped a lot, and without a company like Adafruit with this educational and reasonably cost products, that it would have been a lot harder to work on the clock.
All right, I'll pass it on to Ezekiel as well. I know it's not easy to be an educator. But I know there are so many challenges still out there. You could want to go to a school, for example, and then there are restrictions. I know there was an impact of COVID-19. Of course, we can't always jump to that, where millions of students out of school, for example. So with that and maybe any other challenges, what more are you still facing? What more challenges are you still facing in trying to do most of the climate education work?
Okay, thank you very much. Before I answer the question, I also want to add up to the media issue. So I believe strongly that in Africa, the African youth, activists, educators, young people doing work, they are not yet being profiled enough. They don't have much access to the media. And when we talk about the power of storytelling, you need the media to amplify the works of young people across the continent of Africa and across the world. But when we look at the difference in media support to young people in Africa and other parts of the world, you know that there is a huge gap in that. And based on that, our NGO, the Liberian Youth for Climate Actions, we decided to come up to develop a platform called the Climate Data Effects, where we amplify the voices and stories of young people across Africa. Even Derek Mogisha was also profiled on our platform, and so many young people across the continent. Up to now, we have featured 55 young people from 70 countries in Africa. And among those young people, many of them have come back to us that people have reached out to them after reading their story. Like you said, the power of storytelling. Because people don't have access to their story, so they don't know how to reach them and how to get to them. So we include their emails, their WhatsApp, and everything there so that investors, donors can reach out to them for support. And many of them have benefited a lot. Back to the issue of the challenge. Until this date, the Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit have never gotten any support, any funding. And this is a very powerful toolkit, a very powerful resource document that can actually benefit the continent of Africa. Because it contextualizes climate impacts, climate vulnerability. And the main purpose of this toolkit is to transform the issue of calling Africa a vulnerable continent to a resilient continent. We want to change the dynamic that Africa is vulnerable. We have the power to make our continent resilient. So the toolkit is give people, the young people, the information so that they can take action. Challenges we are faced with, like I said, there is no funding for the toolkit. And also, you talk about the COVID-19. When COVID-19 came, most of the universities went online. And we were doing online learning. And guess what? Many young people don't have access to data package. The internet stability is a problem for Africa, especially in my country, Liberia. It's likely impossible to complete a semester successfully online because you have to buy your own data package. You have to make sure that you have the devices to go online. And that's a huge challenge. And that is a gap for young people accessing quality information and education. For our work, we are self-sponsored. There is no funding, absolutely no funding from any donors, from anyone. We have been struggling to raise funds, and we are calling this COP27 should focus on localizing funding for climate solution for young people. And when the young people have access to funding, when they have access to space, when they have access to the platform, they can do so much that you can imagine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I think you're speaking to a very sensitive point when you say funding, because I think this COP still has a long way to go with financing. If you could see how much they're talking about for adaptation, for mitigation, and then if you ask how much is there for like storytelling and innovations, you know, they'll tell you so many things. They'll again tell you more stories. So again, you see that there is still a long way, but this is a point where we want to have more financing brought onto the table to enable like storytellers. You have seen the video I showed. That needs money as well to do, you get? Because it will try to create an awareness, but again, there are resources that go with it. Like you have to purchase a camera, for example. You have to get like editing softwares and things like that. And this is where I'll bring in Ashwika. You have... Kama, you want to start with that? Okay, you can come in there as well.
No, I was going to say that we are looking for partners in Africa and Asia to do exactly this, to provide them some tools to make films. So if you have contacts, please, this is our challenge, that we are trying to find more schools, more academic institutions to work with in Africa and in Asia. So I just wanted to come in there that we are there to support children, and we have the means to do that. So please, let us know if there are any schools or any academics that you know of, some places that can join us, and we can help them make these films.
Wow, those would have been
incredible.
claps. That's a huge commitment. That's a very huge commitment, and I think we should connect with you after to see how most people here and even those online, we shall try to put these commitments out there for them to know how to access this and things like that. But I'll bring in Ashwika. I know you are a very young leader and you face so many challenges as well. So what could those challenges be for us to, to understand and see the possible solutions?
There are two very specific challenges. I'm speaking from the point of view of my area of expertise, which is natural history documentary filmmaking. There's two very specific challenges that I keep sort of encountering over and over. One is that when you watch these big sort of blue chip natural history programs, and that this has a very commercial reason to it, of course, and it makes sense. But most of the times you will see the stories that come from very iconic places of iconic animals and big stories and big sort of landmark stories. And that's what you see on television over and over again. You see the savannas, you see tigers in India, you see all the classic big stuff. But what gets neglected, and we can't really incorporate this into the very big programs for various reasons, because people want to watch those big things. But what kind of gets neglected in mainstream natural history television is local storytelling. Stories that are coming from all kinds of little pockets and corners of the world that very often don't find a platform to be, don't find people to make them, and don't find a platform to be showcased on. And that basically keeps large parts of the world and large pockets of the world in the dark. People don't know about the problems in various places. You know about the ivory problem in Africa. You know the big stuff, but you don't know all the little stuff that's happening everywhere. So I think one movement that really sort of needs to pick up is local storytelling. And local storytellers need to be empowered to be able to tell local stories. And these local stories needn't necessarily only be for a local audience. It can very much appeal to a global audience if the storytelling is done right. For example, as she mentioned earlier that we were talking about octopus teacher. That's a local story. That's in someone's backyard with one octopus, and it's appealed to the whole planet. So it's just a matter of finding the funding and to be able to support these local stories, because it gives a much greater, better understanding of the planet beyond what the mainstream big shows can provide. That's number one. Number two is we are very biased. We have a massive Western bias when it comes to our audiences. So we make our shows largely for Western audiences, for the US, for UK, for Europe, and things like that. And even if we are not making it for the Western audience, we'll make it, even if you're making it for the Global South, it'll largely be for urban audiences. So large parts of the world, massive parts of the world just get left out of seeing a lot of these documentaries. They just don't get access to see some of these documentaries that are already out there. And it is a matter of not neglecting communities that are in the front lines of climate change. For example, a lot of films that may have been made in the Sundarbans hasn't even been watched by the people around the Sundarbans because of two reasons. One, it doesn't reach them because it's not made for them. And secondly, it's a language problem. Nobody's thought of actually translating it to Bengali or to Hindi and putting it out there. So if you're not going to educate those that are in the front lines of nature or of climate change, then that's leaving out very large parts of the world from the narrative. We're talking in echo chambers and we're prioritizing the same people over and over again. So I think, again, these are not enormous things to do. To translate something into a language, make sure it reaches the right people where it will have the right impact. To find some small amount of funding to support local filmmakers. These are not enormous challenges, but it has to be prioritized. Otherwise, we are just going to keep going around in circles and the same narratives over and over again. So I think that to me is one of two great challenges.
Okay.
Can I come in here?
Yeah, Kama, you can come in as well.
So this is exactly what you are saying, is exactly what this organization has been doing for the last 40 years.
You need to connect.
Yeah. So bio movies, for example, was this challenge that we gave a phone to a young person in Africa, somewhere, wherever they were from, and said, make a local story, which they did and they sent it, and then we've amplified it to the world. We've translated it, we've made it, sort of shown it. And we've got lots of documentaries from all over the world. This year we've got from Assam, we've got from the hinterland, wherever in India, in the south. So we've got lots of films that are being put together for our awards. And then we are putting together a website where you can access all these documentaries, even the ones that were made 40 years ago, to see and compare what has happened. So this, we've been doing this work for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So this time I'll open the floor for questions. So in case you have any question to the panelists, please use this chance. We would have one panelist commit to support your work, to mentor you and to guide you. So this is your chance to, in case you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Is it okay? Thank you, everyone. I really I appreciate the. Okay, right? Okay, thank you. I appreciate the. Okay, I appreciate the conversation, and I do a lot of training for sustainability. That's why this was important to me: storytelling and training and climate education. The challenges elaborated really reflect my country as well. Challenges with data being expensive, unavailable, not speed too much, and then funding really. Yeah, there is no funding actually. My message to the funding theme was even the little climate funding that comes goes through corporations, big corporations and government. And really when the government is planning, it doesn't consider small initiatives like these. So you hear, yes, you hear COP27 talking about financing for climate change, for those big goals, but really it doesn't reach innovations. And really from data, from available data, the only sure way we can achieve climate action is through entrepreneurship and innovation. Politicians help, but it is through private sector, small climate-oriented innovations that we can really make changes. Because as we go from here, and people are making commitments, it will take years and years to fulfill those commitments. I mean, this is COP27. But small local innovations make changes quickly and improve lives quickly. And they are rarely considered when it comes to really funding. So that's a very big point I would really love to stress. And then my last one would be to really help us get in touch with those who have promised a partnership, because we would love to really extend our efforts of training younger people to start SDGs and sustainability-oriented businesses. So partnerships would really help us. So let it be really on your priority to help us connect with all these people who are working in the Liberia and the Search and Innovator and those on the screen, so that we can really do much bigger work in our countries. Thank you. I'm called Vincent and I'm from Uganda. The initiative I founded is called Mikra Life, and we do two things only: training young people to start sustainability-oriented businesses and helping those who already have startups incorporate sustainability in their business models. And that's it, what we are doing, and we have really helped many businesses, about 300. In this year, we have more than 89 in the program. And but like these panelists have stressed, the pace is slow. Funding for them, really it's hard for younger people to move forward. And these ideas they have discussed could really make a difference. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the insights shared and the many thoughts shared. My name is Mwangilwa Enoch, and I'm from Zambia, where we are. By the way, my colleagues have been here for some time, and they called me to come sit with them, and I was interested because we do a lot of environmental education where I'm coming from. So I work for an organization called Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia, where we run conservation clubs in schools. So in my country, we have over 1,000 schools that have conservation clubs that we are running. And we also do trainings of young people into what we call climate change ambassadors with support from various international NGOs, but we are a local non-governmental organization. What interests me really are two things. A comment made by Kappa, sorry if I'm mistaken, yeah. Yes, a comment she makes about how that climate education is like at the base, of, people understanding what we are faced with and how we are going to address it. And yet it's not properly prioritized in terms of making available financial resources that can enable, massive widespread environmental climate education. And so I don't know how we are going to address this, in a conference like this one. When we are talking about climate financing, are we also discussing an aspect of saying, can we get a percentage of that going straight to climate education as a foundation for where we want to be? Okay, because that is very critical. It is very difficult to find resources that are just purely placed on a platter to say this is for climate education. They'll ask you to, incorporate it into some other, idea, but just for education, they are hesitant to do that. And the other thing that I'm interested in, of course, is the partnerships. We would love to partner and tell the stories of the many children and young people in Zambia that are doing a lot of great work, and their stories not heard. Coming to your platform where you are trying to build the context to the African, situation, we are also believers in telling the right context of this climate crisis. I think that's what's lacking, and that's why we may think that some of the solutions we are devising are not locally relevant because, they do not have the right context so that we can build solutions that are more, appropriate for our situation. Otherwise, thank you very much for the insights. Yeah.
I think if there are any questions and someone maybe want to react, is there anyone want to react to any? Okay, so we could go to the last bit of the session today, and I'll just invite I'll start with Greg, your last closing remarks. Where do we go forward? Maybe if you have any other, things you're working on that we need to know. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, perhaps first for Karma, we want a partnership too. So we've got a digital clock that you might be interested in using in some of your programs or as a backdrop. So I didn't mention it in the beginning as well. So that's digital.cclock.org, and that can be used even if you don't have our hardware, our physical portable clock. You can use that on a laptop, on an iPad, on an iPhone, wherever you are. Put up the 6 years counting down, or your lifeline, or even a custom lifeline. Our new clocks now also have the ability to have a custom lifeline, so you can put your own message here. And that's something that youth activists here like Aisha Sadiq and Shie Bastida have been doing, and it's worked really well to integrate with different pavilions and so forth. So, and then you can also have a widget on your website. So that's our full kind of lineup, from the digital to the portable to the car clock or museum clock. That car clock we made is now in the London Museum of Design. And we have a 6-foot clock that's also in the Pennsylvania State House in the lobby. And that's a kind of right-wing, left-wing state in the US. So it's a very interesting place to have it. And then to our monumental clocks, like the huge one in New York City that's on the back of the handouts we have there, that's like 80 feet wide, in Tajikistan and in like South Korea, for example. So that's some of our full lineup, and soon to be on TV, environmental, I hope.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Carmen for the commitment to supporting the work that we are doing. Before I close, I would like to say a few things. That at this COP27, the youth, especially, I always speak for my continent. I hope it is not an issue, because it has been clear, it is visible that we we are the most vulnerable continent in Africa, in the world, and we want to become resilient. And I think one of the best ways that we can become resilient is prioritizing restoration as well. Because we have heard the topic of climate mitigation, climate adaptation. I think AFDs also have a program called the Youth Ambassador Program, which they focus on restoring our earth. And I think restoration is very key. We should also make it a priority on the topics, on the negotiation table, so that we can definitely be able to restore our earth. And also, our NGO, we have this current program that project we have, the 1 million tree Liberia project, where we aim to plant 1 million trees in Liberia as well, which is also a restoration project to make our city of Monrovia green and clean and resilient to climate-induced disasters. So I think it's a project that is very much amazing, and we actually need support as well for this project. And all those other, our toolkit, I hope that Derek also be at the forefront of making sure the Africa Climate Ambassador Toolkit gets the needed support to push the issue of climate literacy in Africa. And all in all, thank you very much for coming to our section and listening to all these amazing speakers. I appreciate our online speaker. Thank you for joining us far away from your home country. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ashwika, you want to give your closing remarks? Okay, Kama, last words?
Surina, yeah. It's Surina. I'm using Karma's phone because my phone went off. Yeah, I'm Surina. All right. The organization is called Television for Environment, and I would love to connect with all of you. And yes, we want the clock, so connect with us. And our focus is going to be Africa. So please, as many of you want to connect, we are actually at the Innovation Zone. So if you want to come and meet us, you're most welcome. And thank you very much for having us.
All right, thank you very much. So we are coming to the closure of our session, and we hope we have inspired you. I think the uniqueness about this session is there was a commitment by a panelist to support most of the work you're doing. So in case you want to connect with Sulina, she's at the Innovation Zone. To our online audience, thanks so much for joining, and we hope you have also equally been inspired. There are so many other sessions still ongoing. Please do keep your eyes onto earthday.org, YouTube, that's where almost all the live streams are. And for those who are here physically, you could always find us at the Climate Education Hub. So thank you very much. For the next, please do keep in touch. Next year, again, we have launched our theme for next year's Earth Day, which is again, invest in our planet. So please do organize so many events. Let's get in touch, let's connect, and see you next time. Thank you.